How a Shocking Mistake by Thomas Edison Changed Hollywood Forever at 3 a.m. In the dead of night, when the world was wrapped in a silken blanket of darkness, a reckless experiment unfolded inside a dimly lit lab, one that would spiral into chaos and ensnare the hearts of Hollywood for decades to come. Thomas Edison, the brilliant inventor known for his dazzling inventions, had a wild look in his eyes, an excitement that shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. No one could have foreseen that this particular night, at exactly 3 a.m., would mark a monumental turning point, sending shockwaves through the silver screen. As Edison flicked the switch on his latest contraption, the air crackled with anticipation. He had been toying with a revolutionary idea, a device that could capture life in a way no camera ever had. But something went horribly wrong. A flash blinded him for a heartbeat. Then came the sound, an ear-piercing crack, followed by a shuddering pulse that resonated throughout the room. Little did he know, this miscalculation would awaken something inhuman, an entity bound to the flickering lights of his creation, a thing of darkness that thrived on fear and desire. Panic rippled through the lab. Edison felt a lump forming in his throat, a weight of unease. A sudden chill swept through the air, causing his fingers to tremble. The shadows danced wildly in the corners, twisting in an uncanny ballet that sent cold shivers down his spine. The whispers began, soft at first, then swelling into a cacophony of voices that echoed through the walls. Each murmur clamored for attention, chilling him further. As he stumbled toward the door, shadows coiled around him like vengeful spirits. "What is happening?" he gasped, his heart racing as he fumbled with the doorknob. The knob felt icy against his palm, almost alive, as if it too had a pulse. Outside, the iridescent glow of the moon fought to pierce through the thick veil of shadows. Who knew what horrors awaited just beyond the threshold? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a hallway engulfed in an otherworldly glow. On the walls, shadows twisted like grotesque caricatures, horrific shapes that seemed to mock his brilliance. Edison felt an icy perspiration pool at his temples. Each heartbeat echoed like a warning drum. What had he unleashed? What secrets were intertwined in this accident that threatened to snuff out his legacy? As he stepped into the unknown, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. If he could grasp hold of this chaos, maybe he could bend it to his will. Would he hold the power to face this darkness? Or would Hollywood be forever altered by whatever lurked just beyond the edge of his wild invention? One thing was certain: he stepped into a world where nightmares and reality collided, and he had no idea what awaited him just around the bend. The shadows stretched and twisted along the hallway, beckoning Edison deeper into their ominous embrace. His heart raced as a low, resonant hum echoed through the corridor, vibrating in his chest like an ominous drum roll announcing doom. Each step felt heavier, as though the very air was thickening, becoming a solid presence that tugged at his limbs, urging him to turn back. As he pressed forward, Edison's mind raced. Was this the price of his ambition? He had sought to capture the essence of life, and now it felt as if it were slipping through his fingers like sand. The walls seemed to pulse, alive with dark intent, shadows whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. He could almost hear them hissing and taunting, each syllable a reminder of the recklessness of his genius. Suddenly, a shriek sliced through the air, sharp and piercing. It was an inhuman sound, twisted with raw anguish. The noise shot through him, paralyzing his limbs. He forced himself to move, pushing deeper into the suffocating dimness. Peering into the depths of the corridor, there was a flicker, a pulse of light bouncing off something. Curiosity battled with his fear, igniting a flame that flickered back to life. Edison approached cautiously, each footfall echoing in the hollow space. There, at the end of the hallway, glowed a shimmering orb illuminating an unfamiliar figure. The spirit of a woman emerged, her form ethereal and shifting, mere wisps of shadow and light as if she were caught between worlds. Her eyes, deep wells of sorrow, met his, and he felt a jolt as emotions flooded his mind: panic, longing, and a desperate plea for release. "Help us," she whispered, her voice like the fragile rustle of leaves in a tempest. "You released him." The shadows quivered, as if in agreement, tightening their embrace around her ghostly form. Edison felt the walls closing in, dread flooding his veins. "What have I done?" he whispered, choking on the reality that faced him. As she faded, the temperature dropped sharply, and the grotesque shadows erupted into a swirling mass, taking on shapes that clawed and grasped at the air, an insatiable hunger radiating from their being. Edison stumbled backward, terror slicing through him. The chaos he had unknowingly unleashed clawed at him, the dark entity fueled by anguish and regret now clashing against the very fabric of his creation. Racing back toward the door, he tried to escape the binding thrall of voices that grew louder, an insistent demand echoing through time. "Unleash us," they shouted, each syllable sharp as a knife. Edison burst through the door into the moonlit night, panting, the fresh air washing over him like a balm. But the weight of dark secrets clung to him like shadows. The world outside was eerily quiet, the moon unflinching in its glow. Edison stumbled toward his lab, fueled by raw fear and the gnawing need to understand a mystery that circled him like a wolf waiting to strike. The device could give him answers, maybe even control over what had been unleashed. But in the depths of his heart, Edison felt something else: a creeping doubt. Would he find a way to reverse the calamity before it consumed him? Or was he destined to play puppet to the darkness he had awakened? With a deep breath, he turned back, determined to face the chaos of his making. But as he re-entered the lab, he realized he wasn't alone. The shadows were waiting. What dark truth lay in the heart of that monstrous invention waiting to be uncovered? And was the price of knowledge one he was willing to pay? Edison's breath caught in his throat as the shadows flickered around him, their movements twisting and curling like smoke. Panic surged through him, but the insatiable pull of curiosity held him firm. Somewhere in that darkness lingered truth or destruction. "Who are you?" he stammered, eyes wide, scanning the room for familiar shapes. The shadows danced, distorting reality, whispering half-formed thoughts. He had to know what he was facing. Was it too late to turn back? "Remember, you called us," declared a voice from within the swirling mass, echoing like a haunting memory. Edison felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead as he pressed his back against the lab's workbench. "Enough!" he shouted, desperation edging his tone. The intensity of their presence surged, and a chorus of anguished whispers filled the air, drowning out his thoughts. They were voices of the lost, those he had inadvertently summoned, demanding recognition, seeking revenge. As if answering his call, a figure began to take shape in the shadows, expanding until it became distinctly human, yet ghostly, a reflection of agony and rage. Edison's heart raced. It was the woman from the hallway, her ethereal glow pulsating like a dying star. Her face was a mask of sorrow, lips trembling. "Why did you bring him back?" she cried, her voice entwined with the sorrow of countless souls. "You didn't think this through, did you?" Edison's mind whirled. Whom did I bring back?" The question slipped from his lips, tasting like ash. "The destroyer," she hissed, and the shadows roared in approval, their energy tightening around him. "You are the architect of your own nightmare. He is here to claim what you owe." A chill zipped down his spine. Memories flooded back: hasty experiments, reckless ambitions. Had he really thought he could manipulate life without consequence? "You're wrong," he retorted, desperation clawing at his throat. "I sought to enhance life, not unravel it." "Enhance?" The woman laughed, but it was a hollow sound, filled with bitterness. "You've played with forces beyond your understanding, and now they demand payment." Edison's pulse thundered in his ears as the truth pierced through his walls of bravado. He could feel it, The very air hummed with a dangerous energy. He had pushed past the boundaries of what should remain untouched, and now the balance was distorted, spiraling toward chaos. The shadows lurched closer, their outstretched tendrils grasping for him an invitation and a threat all at once. Edison stumbled back, searching frantically for a way out. "What do you want?" "Freedom," the masses screamed, their voices blending into a terrifying symphony. "Release us from his grasp, extinguish the flame you have reignited." His thoughts raced. The device that had sparked this calamity, it could be his salvation or his undoing. He glanced toward the glowing apparatus in the corner, a beacon of knowledge and horror. What had he truly done? Could he reverse the imprints of despair he had set loose? "Help us, Edison." The woman's voice shifted, becoming more urgent. "You must choose. Redeem or condemn." Tension coiled in his chest, tightening like a vice. If he chose wrong, the repercussions would echo beyond himself. Would he risk it all to set things right, to stand against the darkness he had unleashed? With the shadows closing in like a storm, he plunged toward his device, heart racing. But as he reached for it, a deafening roar erupted around him, pulling him into uncharted depths of despair. He felt the floor tremble, and a voice deep and ancient rumbled through the darkness. "You think you can challenge fate?" Edison's mind spun, caught between revelation and dread. As he prepared to press a button that could alter everything, something clawed at the edges of his sanity. Was it truly control he sought? Or was he merely feeding the dark hunger he had unwittingly wrought? What if opening that device unlocked a fate worse than the shadows already looming? The echoes of the past swelled behind him, urging him to make a choice. And in that moment, his finger hovered, quivering, poised to ignite either salvation or total ruin. What awaited him in the depths of that chaos? And would the shadows finally unleash their vengeance? Just as Edison's finger hung in the air, a blinding flash erupted from the device, throwing him backward. He crashed onto the cold concrete floor, pain shooting through his body as shadows converged around him, eager to consume the light that had just flared. Flashes of memories, visions of a long-forgotten past, enveloped him. Spectral faces writhed in agony, their eyes filled with torment. He gasped, overwhelmed, as their whispers merged into a cacophony, pleading, cursing, warning. With every second, despair clawed at his conscious thoughts, drowning out the last vestiges of his resolve. "Choose!" the woman screamed, her voice slicing through the turmoil. "You must decide before they take everything." Edison struggled to his feet, adrenaline surging through his bloodstream. "What do you mean, before they take everything? Who are they?" The shadows surged, vibrating with a kinetic fury that threatened to rip apart reality, and he felt the floor shake beneath him. This wasn't just chaos. It was a storm. "They are the remnants," she cried, gesturing at the dark figures swirling menacingly around them. "They were cast aside, forgotten, and now they're hungry for your soul. The balance is tipping, Edison. Time is running out." He glanced back at the device, its glow pulsating with an ominous allure. He could sense its power, but uncertainty gnawed at him. Would opening it grant them the freedom they craved, or just unleash greater horrors? Each breath he took came heavier than the last, the weight of responsibility suffocating him. "Every second you hesitate, they grow stronger," she warned, her form flickering. "It's a game of give and take. What will you sacrifice for freedom? Your mind? Your heart? Your very soul?" The shadows closed in, hunger and desperation radiating from them like heat off asphalt. Edison clenched his fists, wrestling with the gravity of his situation. No one had warned him of this. He hadn't considered the consequences of meddling with life itself, had only seen the potential for greatness. Now that ambition felt like a stake driven into his chest, poised to pierce through his very being. In a moment, fueled by sheer instinct, he lunged for the device, frantically searching for the buttons that had seemed so inviting earlier. Each heartbeat resonated like thunder in his ears, and the shadows writhed closer, a pulsating mass of despair flooding the space around him. "Edison," the woman cried, fear stretching her words thin. "You must think clearly. This is not the answer. But the shadows had surged in intensity, and he felt their icy grasp tightening around him. They were no longer shadows, they were echoes of despair, an army of the forgotten, and he was their target. Fingers trembling, he slammed down on the largest button, its surface giving way under the weight of his decision. The device erupted with energy, bathing the room in blinding light. The shadows shrieked, their forms writhing and contorting as the light spread like wildfire. But then silence fell. It was a heavy, oppressive hush that cloaked the lab. Edison blinked against the stark brightness that filled the space only to find that the shadows had vanished as if swallowed whole. Yet an unsettling realization crept over him. Where had they gone? The woman now stood before him, her face a mask of dread. What have you done? Before he could answer, the device quaked violently, sending a shockwave through the air. Light flickered and dimmed, twisting into unnatural shapes before distorting into something familiar and terrifying. Edison felt a chill run through him as he saw what emerged from the depths of the light, the true destroyer he had inadvertently summoned, more powerful than the shadows he thought he had banished. Welcome to your reckoning. A deep voice boomed, echoing throughout the lab, as realities began to tear apart. What horror had he unleashed, and could he find a way to survive this second wave of chaos? Edison stumbled back, the reality around him twisting and folding. The voice was a low rumble, resonating with pure malice. A figure began to emerge from the depths of the light, a tall silhouette that seemed to absorb the glow rather than reflect it. It wore a tattered cloak, its edges fraying like the fabric of forgotten dreams. The woman, her eyes wide with horror, took a step back. No, this can't be. Her voice trembled, fear evident as she pressed against the wall, searching for an escape. Edison felt his heart race. He was trapped, caught in a web of consequences. The figure took a step forward, and the room shuddered. You have awakened the lost, it bellowed. You thought you could play God, Edison, but you've only opened the door to oblivion. With newfound urgency, Edison scanned the lab, desperate for a way out. The device flickered ominously, its controls glowing like angry eyes. What do you want? He shouted, forcing the words past the lump in his throat. The figure's face distorted slowly into a grotesque mask, a mouth stitched shut yet somehow still able to speak. Your ambition sought to transcend the natural order. Now you will suffer the consequences, as we all have. The woman looked between Edison and the creature, a mix of confusion and terror gripping her. Edison, do something. You can't let it take before she could finish. The figure raised a hand, dark energy swirling at its fingertips. Edison felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing him closer to the creature's grasp. Pain drilled through him, the shadows of doubt and regret lapping at his mind like a rising tide. No, he screamed, shaking off the cold fingers of despair. I want to be your pawn. With a surge of determination, he lunged for the device again, hoping to harness its energy, to reverse whatever catastrophic mistake he had committed. Do you think you can control it? The creature mocked, its form growing taller as if to tower over Edison. You have no idea what you've opened. Edison pressed a button, but the device blinked and crackled, sending spires of electricity dancing around the room. The shadows coiled back, waiting, hungry. He pounded his fist against the console, frustration erupting into wild, panicked movements. Suddenly, the device blinked twice, a strange rhythm that felt almost alive. What is happening? The woman gasped, watching the chaos unfold. The creature's laughter reverberated around them, dark and mocking. You think you can summon hope from despair? The remnants will consume you. Your soul will become one with the void. With desperation clawing at his insides, Edison gritted his teeth. No, I must find a way to fix this. He focused, pulling all his memories, his fears, and ambitions into that moment. The lights flickered violently, and a crack appeared in the very air before them, a window into an abyss darker than night. Figures swarmed at the edges of the crack, eyes gleaming with hunger. They want you, the creature growled, and realization washed over Edison. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the woman too, for all those lost souls bound to this horror. "Do it," she shouted, her voice a beacon amid the chaos. "Use that light." Edison's breath caught, and he threw himself at the device once more, fingers trembling over the controls. The shadows lunged, hungry and insatiable, while Michael's heart hammered in his chest. "I can't hold on much longer," he shouted with one last resolute breath. He slammed both palms down on the flashing buttons, his mind racing. The device whirred, and the crack widened. In that moment of sheer desperation, he felt it pure energy blazing through him, a shockwave radiating outward. But instead of light, darkness surged forth, pulling at his very essence, and he cried out into the void. "What now?" The shadows converged like a maelstrom as the laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence. What lay ahead was more than just endless night. It was the final confrontation, a battle against despair itself. As the darkness closed in, one question burned in his mind. Could he truly face the dread he had summoned, or had he sealed his fate forever? The energy crackled around Edison like a storm, a furious tempest of regret and fear. He strained against the relentless pull of the darkness, feeling it seep into his bones, encasing his heart in a cold grip. The creature towered over him, its hollow eyes piercing through the suffocating shadows. "Embrace it," it hissed, "you cannot escape what you've invited forth." Edison's breaths were shallow, panic clawing at his throat. The shadows twisted and convulsed, writhing like living things hungry for their prey. He knew he had to act, to resist not just for himself but for the woman who stood frozen, paralyzed against the wall. Her wide eyes held nothing but terror, and it shattered Edison's resolve. "Run," he shouted, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Get out of here." But her feet wouldn't move. She was ensnared like a deer caught in headlights, her face a mask of horror. Edison's heart raced not just for himself, but for her too. He couldn't let the darkness take her. Not when she didn't understand the danger that lay in front of them. "The device," she finally gasped, snapping from her trance just as the crack in the air widened, shimmering with darkness. "You have to use it, Edison." "Use it how?" he yelled, frustration spilling over as he shoved his hands over the controls again. They thrummed beneath his fingers, and he felt the weight of untold possibilities fighting against despair. If he could channel the energy, if he could bend this chaos to his will, but the shadows pressed forward, ready to swallow them whole. He felt their coldness creeping into his skin, black tendrils seeking to snatch him away. The memory of laughter taunted him, the faint echo of joy fading into silence, and anger surged within him like molten fire. "I'm not afraid of you," he roared defiantly, and in that moment, despair turned to resolve. He focused, channeling every ounce of energy and fear into the device, willing it to respond. Lights flared brightly, illuminating shadows that had long forgotten the warmth of the sun. The creature recoiled, a snarl twisting its features. "Foolish mortal," it shouted. "You cannot hope to wield what you do not understand." As Edison pressed buttons in a feverish frenzy, a melody erupted from the device, haunting yet beautiful. The darkness momentarily stalled, as if the very fabric of fate was unraveling. The creature faltered, and Edison seized the moment. "Together," he urged, turning to the woman. "We can fight this." She blinked, uncertainty flickering in her gaze, but then, slowly, she moved to his side, her hand gripping his tightly. Together they focused his determination and her fire igniting a spark of hope. The device hummed loudly, resonating with their combined will. The shadows faltered again, flickering like a candle in the wind. "No, you cannot take back what is lost," the creature screeched, its form distorting in fury. But Edison felt the pulse of the device synchronize with their heartbeat, a rhythm that carried strength and purpose. "We'll show you," he declared, his voice resonating with newfound power as they channeled their energy. Light spewed forth from the device, illuminating the darkness. In that moment, hope bloomed within the storm, a beacon stretching out into the abyss. The shadows recoiled, hissing and shrieking, and Edison knew they were onto something. But then, Just as victory seemed possible, the ground beneath them trembled, and the room began to spiral into chaos again. The walls twisted and warped as if the very realm they inhabited was being pulled apart. Edison shouted, "What is happening? Something's wrong," she cried, gripping his arm tighter. The creature laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the madness. "You think you can undo this? You have only begun to feel the true depth of your failure." As if in answer, the ground split, and a chasm yawned open beneath them, swallowing shadows, and suddenly, Edison felt the familiar cold grip of fear creeping back in. They were losing control, and the consequences could be catastrophic. "Edison!" she screamed as the chasm widened, swallowing any remnants of light. His heart raced. What if all they had done only made things worse? In the heaviness of despair, one thought surfaced. They had to face the creature together, but at what cost? Would this be the end of everything they knew, or just the beginning of something darker? The chasm below them gaped open like a hungry maw, a deep nothingness threatening to pull them down into its abyss. Edison felt the fear clawing at his mind, a primal instinct telling him to run, to flee from this nightmare. Yet he stood rooted to the spot, adrenaline surging, holding on to her hand as if it was the only tether to reality. "Stay with me," he shouted, his voice almost lost in the chaos around them. The device pulsed between them, its light flickering in and out like a dying star, and he could see her panic competing with determination. "Edison, what are we going to do?" she shouted back, her eyes darting from the creature to the dark void below. "Concentrate," he ordered, summoning every inch of his focus. "We need to push back. If we go down together, it'll be the end for both of us." The creature's laughter echoed, a sound laced with malice. "You think your paltry light can withstand the darkness? You're merely igniting your own demise." That struck a chord deep within Edison, a ripple of doubt that slithered into his mind. What if it was right? What if this surge of power only made things worse? A chill ran down his spine, but he shook it off, swallowing the fear. "No," he whispered fiercely, conviction filling him. "We're stronger than it thinks." He squeezed her hand tighter, feeling the warmth laden with courage. "Together," he said again, "let us blow this darkness apart." They stood shoulder to shoulder, the device humming ever louder as each of their heartbeats synchronized into a powerful rhythm. Edison focused on that light, envisioning it expanding, generating a shield around them, pushing back against the gnashing shadows. "Now!" he barked, and they pressed their palms against the device together. The melody rose higher, an ethereal symphony that cut through the oppressive darkness. It formed a barrier, a brilliant white shield reflecting the incoming shadows. The creature screamed, but Edison couldn't afford to relent. There was no room for weaknesses now. "Keep pushing," he urged, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The light radiated, illuminating the corners of the room that had been swallowed by despair. Edison could see the minuscule particles of darkness struggling against their resolve, desperately attempting to resurface. Suddenly, the weariness in his arms began to weigh him down, exhaustion pushing at him. He glanced sideways at her. Her face paled, teeth clenched in determination, but he could see the strain etched in her expression. "Don't let go," he shouted, feeling the rhythm waver. "We can't stop now. No matter what happens. I won't let go," she cried, her voice stronger, cutting through the haze of doubt. And just like that, a bright spark ignited deep within both of them. Their trust became fuel, and the light surged forward, expanding wildly, seizing power from the device and reverberating through the shadows. But as the shadows recoiled, the ground trembled fiercely, threatening to swallow them whole. Edison felt a surge of panic as he stumbled, losing his footing. "Edison!" she screamed, and her grip slipped slightly. "Hold on," he shouted, positioning himself against the widening chasm, trying to regain balance. Then, shockingly, he felt an intense surge emanating from the device, a shocking response to their sheer will. "It's working. Come on," he urged, reckless hope filling his chest as they strengthened their connection. But they were losing ground. the chasm growing wider and deeper, its darkness pouring in. Was there a way to transcend this despair? Would their newfound brightness be enough against the creature's sinister hold? As the shadows lunged once more, they could sense it. To win this battle, they had to sacrifice something deeper. What remained within them was fading, and with every heartbeat, Edison realized the unpredictable truth. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was becoming so much more. "Edison, what's next?" she gasped, her breath faltering. He caught her gaze, recognizing the critical moment that lay ahead. The light pulsed one last time, a crescendo of hope, stretching towards the very abyss beneath them. "Everything comes down to us," he shouted, determination settling in his core. But as the dark tendrils spiraled around them, Edison couldn't shake the nagging whisper. What would they have to sacrifice to cleanse the darkness for good? And just as the crescendo hit its peak, the device crackled ominously, revealing something profound in its glow, a warning, or perhaps the key to their salvation. What lay ahead remained uncertain. The blinding light erupted like a supernova, drowning them in a brilliance that seemed to push back the dark. Edison felt every nerve ending ignite as the energy poured through him, filling the space with a warm, enveloping glow. It wrapped around them, forming something tangible, an almost solid, radiant shield. But then came the creature's howl, a terrible mixture of rage and desperation. The noise clawed at his ears, as if it were trying to dig its way into his mind. The shadows twisted and writhed, struck by the light but determined to reclaim what they had lost. "Don't let it close in," Edison shouted, the sound of his voice ringing in his own ears. He could sense her energy ebbing, could feel her fingers trembling in his grasp. With every second, the device responded to their will, but it was also drawing on their strength. This wasn't just about fighting the darkness. It was consuming them. Edison, her voice trembled now, filled with a fragile urgency. I can't, you can. You have to," he yelled, willing her to fight, to dig deeper. "We're so close. Just a little more." Yet, Edison felt the weight of desperation creeping in. He could see the apparatus flickering, the light wavering in sync with their own resolve. As if sensing their fatigue, the dark entity pressed harder against them, claws of shadow reaching into the bursting light, hungry for the energy it craved. Suddenly, the ground beneath them heaved violently, a deep rumble that shook them to their core. Edison stumbled, thrown off balance. The chasm yawned wider, as if challenging them to succumb to its depths. "Watch out," she yelled, her face pale and strained. He couldn't lose her. He couldn't let go. As she leaned into him, something deep within Edison shifted. He felt a whisper of clarity, a realization slicing through the chaos. The shadows thrived on fear, and they were infused with doubt. In that breathless moment, he understood. They could transform that fear into something else, something powerful. "Focus. We cannot let fear win," he shouted, the fervor sending fresh energy both through her and the device. He could see it shimmer back to life, pulse with an intensity that sent ripples across the surface. Together, they could draw from the very essence of their fear and channel it into light, into a brilliant first strike against their adversary. "Let it go. Let go of the fear," Edison cried, and saw her expression shift from panic to fierce determination. She closed her eyes, inhaling sharply, as if drawing strength straight from her core. A brilliant, golden spiral radiated from her hand, infusing their shield with even more power. "I'm with you," she whispered, a love fiercer than even the darkness surrounding them. The shadows recoiled, but Edison pushed harder. Together, now, they unleashed their combined strength, a blinding cascade of light erupting outward, cutting through the darkness like a knife. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze, everything suspended at the peak of their desperation, radiance, and hope. But just as they thought victory might be close, the creature unleashed a final bellow, the ceiling above cracking, dust and debris falling like rain. In that chaotic moment, Edison felt the tether begin to fray. The device flickered ominously, sending out sporadic bursts of light. "No, don't fail us now." Then, As the shadows lunged one last time, the ground sprang upwards, forming ledges of darkness beneath their feet. Edison could feel the chasm's pull growing stronger, threatening to drag them into the fray. The final assault felt imminent, and in an instant, the very foundations of what they had created began to tremble. "Edison!" she screamed, eyes wildly searching for a way out. But what could they do? It all hung in the balance, every heartbeat echoing their fears. What would they sacrifice to conquer the shadows and seal the abyss forever with their light? As the darkness closed in, embracing them like a cold shroud, a chilling thought pierced through. Did they miscalculate just how destructive the shadows could be? The connection faltered. The flickering device dimmed. "I can't hold on," came her whisper, fear dawning in her eyes. Time stretched, and they stood on the precipice of oblivion, clinging to the fading light. But then Edison felt a spark of possibility beneath the dread. He just had to reach deeper, deeper. What would he discover, and at what cost? Edison's heart raced, each beat a reminder that they were teetering on the brink of something enormous, something catastrophic. He felt the heat from the fading light washing over him like a painful memory. It burned, a reminder of their struggle, a reminder that they might not escape. "Stay strong," he urged, clenching her hand. "I need you." An unexpected surge of laughter echoed behind him, startling both of them. It was dark, guttural, a laugh that didn't belong to any living soul, but rather seemed to sprout from the shadows itself. The creature was enjoying their struggle, drawing on their desperation like a fiend relishing a feast. "Edison." "It's too late." Her eyes shone with a mix of fear and resignation. "No, it's not. We're still here, we're still fighting." The conviction in his voice felt thin even to him, like ice slowly cracking beneath the weight of truth. In a moment of clarity, Edison released her hand long enough to turn toward the swirling darkness. He could feel its cold breath on the back of his neck, its claws trying to scratch away at his resolve. The shadows were alive, reaching for them with a predatory hunger. "Think of it. All the fear and pain can become hope," he shouted, his voice cutting through the howling winds of darkness. "What do we love? What drives us forward?" The creature's laughter morphed into something more menacing. The shadows rippled and quivered, sensing his resolve. They craved despair. They thrived on sorrow. But could they harness love? Suddenly, fragments of memories danced before his eyes. Moments spent laughing with friends, lingering glances across the room. A passionate kiss shared beneath the stars. The feeling of hope when someone believes in you. He gasped as ideas flooded his mind. "We can turn this around. Let us cut through the darkness with our love. Come on." The device flickered in response, battling the shadow's grasp. Edison stepped closer to her, bringing their hands together. A spark ignited, his heart pounding in tune with her pulse. "Focus on the light. Focus on what we love," he shouted, pouring everything he had into their bond, urging her to channel her memories alongside his. She nodded, closing her eyes tighter, and soon their love wrapped around them like a shield against the encroaching abyss. They could feel that warmth forming anew, a shield against both fear and despair. Together, they shouted in unison with a final push. They unleashed a wave of sunlight so blinding it sent ripples through the darkness. The shadows shrieked, a sound so filled with fury it could crack stone. They felt the pressure lessening, the claws that gripped them beginning to loosen. But that moment of triumph was short-lived. As the creature recoiled, it lashed out in a last-ditch effort to reclaim its power. The very ground split again, swallowing vibrantly glowing fragments of their shield, crashing them into the depths of despair. "Edison!" she cried again, terror in her voice, grasping for something solid on the treacherous terrain that was shifting beneath them. "No!" With a desperate leap, he took a step forward, reaching into the vastness, grasping at whatever he could find. At that very instant, he felt a surge of energy flow from within, illuminating the darkness as if it were a lighthouse beacon guiding a ship home. "Look!" he yelled, the brightness reflecting in her eyes. But the chasm was relentless, pulling them closer down into its depths suddenly. At the edge of the chasm, Something glinted like metal in the light. A strange artifact, forgotten and buried. It flickered, pulsing with a supernatural glow, calling to him. Could it be the answer they needed? An ancient weapon against the encroaching shadows? Edison, we have to move, she shouted above the chaos. Hold on. I'm getting it, he yelled back, straining to keep his balance, the device waning in strength. But would claiming the artifact give them the power they needed to seal the darkness away for good? Or would it lead them straight to the heart of despair? As he reached out for the item, he could feel the weight of destiny hovering around him. What lay ahead was an unknown filled with shadows, and even with love shining bright, the fight was just beginning. Edison's fingers grazed the cold artifact, a strange pulsation reverberating through his fingertips. He could feel the weight of it, ancient, powerful. It thrummed with a melody of echoes long forgotten, stories of victory intertwined with tales of despair. Grab it, Edison. Now, she shouted, urgency slicing through the chaos. With a surge of determination, he clasped the artifact tightly. The moment he held it aloft, the room shivered. Light exploded in vibrant hues, a radiant force that momentarily stunned the shadows swirling around him. They screamed in fear, recoiling from the brightness. But their cries didn't stop the darkness from tugging at his soul. I can't leave you. I won't lose you now, Edison shouted, panic threading through his resolve. The fading light was wrapped in shadows like vines suffocating the bloom of a flower. Just focus. You have to push back. Channel the energy, she urged, her voice barely audible above the cacophony of despair. Taking a deep breath, he concentrated, pouring everything he had into the artifact. Memories flooded back, the laughter of friends, kisses shared under the stars, moments frozen in time filled with love and warmth. The light brightened in response, a whirlwind of hope igniting as he merged his essence with the passing ether. Now, he yelled, as the barrier began to expand, light flooding through their trembling forms. Together they stood at the precipice of darkness, uniting their strengths, their fears, their love. The shadows twisted and lunged, despair clawing at them with insatiable greed. But Edison held firm. The breathlessness of dread was just the force that tempered their fire. Fight for this. Fight for us, he cried, channeling the full force of love and resolve. The figure of the creature twisted painfully as the brightness exploded outwards. The shadows wailed, their claws retreating, dragging what's left of their darkness back into the void. Edison could feel the warmth of the artifact, harmonizing beautifully with their light, erasing the shadows inch by excruciating inch. In that moment of clarity, Edison poured out a prayer into the ether, hoping it would transcend the dimensions between them. Release them. Let them go, he screamed, his voice raw, filled with the urgency of a mission fraught with fear. The force pushed against him, yet he pressed on, pulling the energy of lost souls, screaming for freedom, a voice amplified through his body. Light surged. Rays of brilliant energy shot forth, and the device hummed in response, vibrating beneath the weight of hope, tilting the scales against despair. Then came the crescendo, a blinding burst of radiance that enveloped everything. The room flooded with brilliant, invigorating energy, and suddenly, the shadows flinched and shattered, cascading like broken glass. We did it, she gasped, her voice filled with both awe and disbelief. Edison felt the release, a surge of joy as the dark clawing retreated, siphoning away the shadows that had clung to their souls. The cold grip around them loosened until it finally faded into nothingness. Breathing heavily, the lab pulsated with dimmed light, the light bulbs twinkling back to life, illuminating the wreckage around them. Edison turned to her, relief washing over him. The shadows had dissolved back into the cracks of time they once came from, lost forever in the currents of history. What just happened? She breathed, still feeling the heat of their collective struggle thriving between them. I think Edison struggled, managing a smile. We broke free of the darkness. We changed the course of our fates. As reality settled back into place, they stood side by side, their heartbeats in sync, the shadows now merely memories. They looked at the device. Its once worrying glow transformed into a gentle pulse, resonating softly in the aftermath. From now on, let us create with love rather than ambition, he declared. It never should come to this. She nodded, the solidarity tightening the bonds between them. We'll tell the world what happened so this doesn't occur again. Driven by a new purpose, they stepped outside together into the moonlit night, hand in hand, breathing in the fresh air, feeling renewed. The world before them shimmered, an invitation to chase after dreams, to create without fear, to inspire rather than destroy. Edison gazed at the stars lingering in the quiet sky, hope blooming anew in both their hearts. A new beginning awaits us, he whispered. We'll be ready, she smiled back. And together, they forged ahead into a future where darkness could never shadow the light again, where their love transformed ambition into something pure, something that would last. Hey, if you loved this thrilling conclusion, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happens next. You need to be part of this amazing community.